Hello, everyone. As you enter our space tonight, welcome. My name is Shannon Jackson. I'm Associate Vice Chancellor for Arts and Design here at UC Berkeley, and it's a privilege, again, to welcome you to another iteration of A+D Mondays, our weekly evening series that is co-curated by a range of campus organizations to feature the people and ideas, the movements and practices that most compel the Berkeley faculty, our students, our staff, and our community. As I also want to make a special welcome to our Hum 20 students who tune in every week, and also to community members, some who've been with us always, every week from the beginning, even when we also hosted this evening in our beautiful theater at BAM-PFA, and all of those who have been with us every Monday night throughout the academic year online. If this is the first time that some of you have been joining, I'll let you know that this series is co-curated by a number of campus organizations who come together to put on a shared theme and a shared exploration. Organizations such as the African American Student Development Office, the Berkeley Center for New Media, the Art Practice Department, the Department of Theater, Dance, and Performance Studies, Cal Performances, Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive, and also the Arts Advocates of Berkeley Law. Tonight, we have the privilege of hosting a gathering conceived by the College of Environmental Design. As I hope you saw from the online announcements, the theme that we identified for the series is Together, Reinventing Politics, Reimagining Health. And we came up with this theme as a kind of shared commitment to ourselves and to our institution at a time when our campus, our community, and a wider network of kindred spirits felt the need for some reimagining. It's also a theme that, of course, is all too important on the UC Berkeley campus as we undergo our own process of institutional redefinition, especially one that confronts the fraught history of the land on which we gather, even if we do so virtually tonight. UC Berkeley is sited on the ancestral and unceded land of the Ohlone tribe. And in acknowledging our relationship to that land, to the Ohlone history, we recognize that the Ohlone people are thriving members of the Berkeley community and the Bay Area more widely, and also people who are doing their own work of reimagining what it means to be together and understanding that definitions of health and definitions of politics are due for another reinvention in that process. It's also with that theme, a theme that is focusing on the aesthetics and politics of place, that it is particularly exciting to be able to host an urgent and necessary dialogue tonight. This dialogue, conceived, as I said, with the College of Environmental Design, is entitled Black Girls, Black Voices, Black History. And it will be guided tonight by my colleague, Charisma Acey, who I have the privilege of introducing now. Charisma Acey is an associate professor in the Department of City and Regional Planning in CED. Her background includes work, research, and travel to a range of countries in West Africa, Southern Africa, and Central America. Her work focuses on local and regional environmental sustainability with a focus on poverty reduction, urban governance, environmental justice, food justice, and access to basic services. Recent and ongoing research includes fieldwork in Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, and Uganda, exploring sustainable household alternative energy solutions and access to basic services such as waste and sanitation, urban agriculture, and sustainable planning as well in San Francisco, East Bay, Columbus, Ohio, Portland, Oregon. For more than 20 years, Charisma Acey has supported communities, nonprofits, local governments, academia, and industry to develop interventions that improve equitable social and environmental outcomes for vulnerable, marginalized populations. It is a thrill to have her with us now at UC Berkeley, and a true privilege to know that she will be our guide for the event this evening. So without further ado, I ask you to offer a warm, if muted, welcome to Charisma Acey. I'll turn the screen over to you, Charisma.
Thank you so much, Shannon, for that very kind introduction. And thank you to the Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive for this space and forum, as well as the Arcus Endowment Diversity Platform Committee of the College of Environmental Design here at Berkeley. Tonight, I'm so honored to be here to moderate this exceptionally talented and accomplished group of panelists who represent the best and the brightest of Berkeley and exemplify Black excellence in so many ways in their scholarly and creative pursuits. The title of tonight's panel, Black Girls, Black Voices, Black History, is so critical and timely in its focus, given that for over a year now, we've experienced incredible trauma from the pandemic of COVID-19, as well as the pandemic of racial injustice, intolerance, and state violence. Just like the pandemic is surging, the virulence of ugly racism and violence continues to surge, whether it's against our Asian sisters and brothers, or the continuing wrongdoing and bloodletting without impunity at the hands of police that we're seeing even this very week. Somehow amid that, there has been a collective call to reckon with the history and past trauma that have directly contributed to the present. At the same time, the ability to center the struggles and voices, past and present, and to mourn both what could have been and what we've lost is an important part of the journey and process of healing necessary to restore our individual and collective souls, to right our moral compass in order to truly carry forward the work of racial justice. So tonight we'll be talking about a number of cross-cutting themes that resonate through the work that Rasheed, Zach, and Ree will present. Themes including Black creative practice and process, Black space making and placemaking and practicing community, mourning, space, place, home, Blackness and loss, and honoring our Black ancestors. We've organized the panel to cover these themes as they evolve through time from past to present. And with that, I'd like to introduce our amazing panel in the order that they will be presenting. First, we'll hear from Rasheed Shabazz. Rasheed is a journalist, historian, and urban planner in the Bay Area. He was born in East Oakland and raised in West Alameda. Rasheed studied African-American studies and political science here at Berkeley and is currently completing his master's in city and regional planning. Rasheed plans to continue in a doctoral program in urban planning. His research interests are at the intersections of media representations, racial segregation, social movement, and urban histories. Tonight, Rasheed will discuss his ongoing project, Negro Piedmont, Race, Redlining, and Black History in Berkeley, a digital history website exploring the impacts of systemic racism and the historical development of unequal geographies in Berkeley. Next, we will hear from Zach McRae. Zach was born and raised in San Francisco and currently resides in the city. Zach's professional career has primarily been in the philanthropic sector, where he's worked for local foundations like the San Francisco Foundation and the Walter and Elise Haas Fund. During his time at these foundations, Zach led and supported multiple efforts to support racial equity and belonging movements in the Bay Area, ranging from public education, affordable housing, police reform, and community development. Zach is currently a graduate student in the Department of City and Regional Planning at Berkeley, and his interests and research examine how local political economies are conducive to residential segregation, race-based remedies that fit in the framework of fair housing laws, and supporting grassroots movement building through investments in the built environment, as well as dissecting capitalist approaches to land management. Tonight, Zach will discuss community visions, reimagining planning through the liberation of Black communities. It's a monthly podcast featuring CED's Black alumni, faculty, graduate students, and community leaders, and discusses politically pointed issues such as race and class struggles within the planning and built environment. And Zach's project draws from an earlier iteration of community visions led by students in the CED in the 1990s. And then Ree is going to take us home. Reelaviolette Ward is a homegirl, an artist, and a non-traditional community curator from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She is currently a doctoral candidate in African diaspora studies here at UC Berkeley. Ree curates healing circles, exhibitions, courses, and research for and by Black women. Her dissertation research explores Black women's healing spaces in Oakland as sites of radical self-making and world-making. She remains invested in making her work accessible to community audiences using art and poetry as tools of translation. Her first book, Mourning My Inner Black Girl Child, published by Nomadic Press this year in 2021, uses poetics as a praxis for exploring intergenerational impacts of girlhood trauma on Black women. Her work has been supported by the UC Berkeley Arts Research Center, the Woodrow Wilson National Fellowship Foundation, and the Alliance for the Arts in Research Universities, among others. Ree will discuss Black Girl Quarantine, an exhibition of Black women healing in the wake of 2020, an exhibition organized and curated by her and Letitia Carpenter. Black Girl Quarantine invites Black women into collective mourning, grief work, and healing in the wake of 2020. Breonna Taylor, Oluwatoyin Salau, Dominique Fells, and countless Black women mourned through Say Her Name 2020, compounded by the loss of beloved artists like Brax and China Rogers, only exacerbate Black women's intimacy with mortality this season. So Ree will talk more about that work and bring this story of Black girls, Black voices, and Black histories to the present. So we'll begin with each panelist giving an overview of their work, and then we're going to have a free-flowing discussion. And then in the last portion of our time together tonight, we'll open it up to Q&A. So I'm going to stop talking and let the stars of the evening shine. I want to ask everyone on the call to use the chat because we can't see you in this format. So please give a warm welcome or message of support to our panelists, or just say that you're ready for the conversation to begin. So please type your messages in the chat as forms of applause. And then I'm going to invite Rasheed to start us off for the evening.
Right, peace be with you all. Thank you so much, Professor Acey, and thank you for the opportunity to share tonight. So again, my name is Rasheed Shabazz. I'm currently in the Masters of City Planning program here at UC Berkeley. And tonight I will be presenting Negro Piedmont. So this, I'll tell a little bit about where the name came from in a moment, but I just wanted to just share a little bit about my own background and research interests. Again, I'm from the Bay Area. I was born in a town. That is a colloquial expression for Oakland. And my family moved from East Oakland to the west end of Alameda near the Navy base. And so little did I know as a child, I was growing up with the vestiges of racial segregation. And that's one of the things that has inspired a lot of my different work. And so coming to Berkeley, I got really interested in Bay Area history. I came in political science. I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to sue the city of Alameda. That was my goal at the time. And got really into urban history and found that intersection or a number of intersections within urban planning. And so in the program, I've had an opportunity to continue to do some historical work. And that has led to what I'll share today, Negro Piedmont. So today I'll give you all a little bit of background, or just gave you a little bit of background. We'll talk about the 1937 Homeowners Loan Corporation map, which inspired the title of this project. I'm going to share some of the materials that I've been compiling, and I'm going to be making available for the public. And I'm going to show what I've been able to do recently, just with some of the things that are available online, and how I hope to compile this and some additional things in the future to make it available for other researchers. So without further ado, like I said, this was again a little bit about myself, and this is an image from the Berkeley Historical Society's publication exact opposite. And this is from, our last semester, our last full semester in person. So my first semester at Berkeley, they had an exhibit called African Americans in Berkeley, Four Families. And this exhibit at the Berkeley Historical Society focused on these four families, including the Rumfords and others. And this was something that really inspired me to want to continue doing work focused on Berkeley, to understand some of these issues that I'm concerned with. So urban history, racial segregation, etc. And then while in a class with Professor Carolina Reed, I did some work focused on home ownership in South Berkeley. And then I did a history focused on why BART goes underground in Berkeley in Karen Frick's class. And so these were things that really led me to see that I could do some of the things I'm interested in while focusing on Berkeley, but also just having some familiarity with these archives. There's a lot of stuff that I think the general public may not have access to because they don't get a UC Berkeley ID and get to go into the archives the same way. So this is a 1937 map. Many of us call them redlining maps. And it's when a federal agency got local appraisers to rate different neighborhoods and communities. And on the map, for those who are familiar with this, you can see most of this is the city of Berkeley, although it's some of the North Oakland area, East Oakland, and Piedmont, hills of East Oakland, that is. And so the areas that were marked red or were the lowest grade or grade D, and these were areas that were seen as more risky for investment. And so in the area of D4, which is a large portion of South Berkeley, west of what is that, Adeline or Shattuck, west of Shattuck, and then between San Pablo, this was an area of South Berkeley that was called Negro Piedmont by this real estate appraiser. And so in calling it that, they noted it was originally a white subdivision, but now most of the white folks have moved out. And it was seen as Negro Piedmont because since the early 1900s, according to Gretchen Lemke Santangelo, at least, after the 1906 earthquake, it became the place to be for Black people in the East Bay who were, quote unquote, upwardly mobile. And so in this area, Black folks were able to purchase homes, and a number of homes which had a little bit more value than the more crowded area of West Oakland where folks were segregated to. And so this is a map from that was scanned by the Project Mapping Inequality, and this is the area description. So these maps also have descriptions of each area in which you can learn more about them. So some of the other things I'm doing with this project is scanning a number of different secondary sources when there are not copyright issues. Two that I just want to point out for those who are interested in Berkeley history. One is called Visions Towards Tomorrow. I actually have a copy of this. And it's the name of a permanent exhibit that's at the African American Museum and Library at Oakland. And it focuses on history of the East Bay, focused on African Americans. And amongst other people that are authors of this, Lawrence Cruchet, who was a professor at Diablo Valley College, but also Lonnie Bunch, who's now the curator at the National Museum of African American History and Culture, which is in DC. And then former, I think he was at Vista College and later Berkeley City College, Charles Wallenberg's Berkeley, A City in History, is also a helpful book to learn more about Berkeley history. And then lastly, I have the copy from the library here. This is Gretchen Lemke's Afro-Americans in Berkeley, 1859 and 1987. So these are a couple of different books that provide some information about Black history in Berkeley. And I'm particularly interested in the histories, again, prior to World War II, and not just the history of Black people, but also the histories that have of policies that created the areas in which Black folks could live and created the areas for white folks in Berkeley. So in addition to compiling some of these secondary sources as a bibliography and providing information, I'm also compiling different primary sources. Actually just starting from the right, this is an excerpt from an oral history with Francis Albrier, who I'll talk about in a moment. In the middle is an image of Walter Gordon. Walter Gordon was the governor of the Virgin Islands, and he is known as the first Black student to graduate from Bolt, what was formerly known as Bolt Law School, and he's the first Black cop in Berkeley. And so, a person with a very interesting history. And so, this is an image from Cal Athletics. And then lastly, a fascinating document, the colored directory of the leading cities of Northern California. And so this is a publication that was created by a young man named Charles Tillman. And he's the son of this pretty well-known club woman, Hetty Tillman. And in this directory, it's like a yellow pages for those who are familiar with those, a list of addresses, but focusing primarily on not only the home addresses of the residents, but also the churches and businesses of the colored residents of the East Bay. So you can look at these three documents, or these 3 pages rather. You can see these estimates that he has, a little bit different from the census estimations. He has an introduction talking about how great the homes are, and some other things related to growth. And then there's a picture of him in the top right-hand corner. In this book, there's an image of the home of the Purnell family, Dr. W. Whipper Purnell. And so I was able to find his address via the internet and the U.S. Census documents. And I was able to find a picture on Google Maps. That's currently the picture of their home, which is at the corner of, it's at 1600 Woolsey Street. And according to who I saw with some moving gear at that house when I looked on Google Maps, I don't think their family lives there anymore. These are images that I was able to find online, the Oakland Wiki. This is an image of Dr. Purnell and his wife, Miss Theodora Purnell. And this was on the occasion of their anniversary in a newspaper called the Oakland Sunshine. So, I got curious after finding their house in that document. And then I was able to go on ancestry.com and find their family member on their family on the 1930 census. And so looking through who was a part of their family, well, actually, before even sharing that, one, was just interested to see who lived on their block. And so you can see on this document, or if you were to go on ancestry.com, they were the only Negroes on that block at the time. And then their son, Lee Purnell, who at the time was in his early 30s, he was an engineer and worked at Pacific Gas and Electric. And so once I looked him up, I found out that he later became a professor at Howard University, and a local historian, Theodore Bolton, created a Pinterest account with a lot of Berkeley history. And he included this image from the 1915 Berkeley High yearbook with Lee Purnell over there on the left. And according to Theodore, he was the only Black student at Berkeley High at that time. And I had a great conversation with Theodore last week. Shout out to Theodore and Gene Anderson for scanning that image from the Oakland Sunshine. In addition to documents and images, I also hope to post links to different oral histories of Black people from Berkeley. And so this is an image of one of my sheroes, Frances Mary Albrier. She was trained as a nurse, and she wasn't able to find work because of racial discrimination in California. So she later, she joined Marcus Garvey's UNIA, Black Cross Nurses. And so a group of Black women who worked as nurses. And she has just this storied history from doing that to later being the first Black person, Black woman as well, to run for the city council in Berkeley, got on the Alameda County Democratic Club. She led boycotts, don't shop where you can't work. She was a welder during World War II in Richmond in a segregated auxiliary, and just generations of community activism and organizing. And so this is from an oral history that she did in 1978 with Berkeley's Regional Oral History Center. And she talks about her experience of moving to Berkeley and just some of the her observations at that time, and including her sense around segregation when she first moved there. So in the future, I'm pulling all these materials together, and after I finish this thesis and we graduate, I'm going to post this to a website, and I hope to curate some other primary sources, such as making more maps available. And I hope something as a future project, perhaps in collaboration with students in the future, transcribing some of the where Black folks live, to be able to map that where possible, especially with copyright requirements, embed some of the audio of these interviews, and ultimately to enable others to be able to access this data to do their research. And then finally, once the site is up, I'll be curating some images on Instagram at Negro Piedmont. And then just to explain, this is a zoning map from 1922 from Sonia Hurt. She uploaded this and used this as part of her research for Zoned in the USA. So I appreciate you all for listening. I just want to give a few shout outs to some awesome librarians and archivists. First, the renowned Delilah Beasley, author of The Negro Trailblazers of California, Theodore Bolton, Stephanie Ann Anderson, librarian David Eifler, Harvey Smith, and Jean Anderson. These are all people who have contributed to creating archives, managing them, and building the local history. The professors, Karen Frick, Carolina Reed, and Professor Charisma Acey, who I was able to do coursework that contributed to this project. Some of the different libraries that I missed so much during COVID, AMLO, the Bancroft, CED, the Public Library, as well as materials at the Berkeley Historical Society. And I'm really grateful for Diversity Platforms and BAM PFA for allowing us to share some of these stories today. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Rasheed. That was amazing and fascinating, and so many great comments are coming in into the chat, just celebrating your work. And we're going to continue with more amazing work and hear from Zachary McRae. So Zach, take it away.
Wonderful, thank you. And thank you, Charisma, Shannon, CED, BAM PFA. Really appreciate this opportunity to share this work with y'all. And I'm just gonna share my screen real quick. Wonderful. Well, I hope you all can see that. And I also want to say thank you to Professor Rasheed Shabazz for starting us off. I know you don't got the letters quite yet, but I'm still trying to get an A in your class, but I'm gonna keep trying. I didn't cite my sources, so I might get dinged, but we'll just go from there. So I'm here to talk about Community Visions. It is a podcast. It is a narrative project that focuses on the voices of Black folks in or adjacent to the fields of planning and the built environment. You know, really focusing on the storytelling, the oral histories, and again, trying to contribute to the archive work that Rasheed has laid out earlier in the presentation. So a little bit of history of the origins of this project. As Professor Acey mentioned, this has its roots in the publication Community Visions, which can be found at the CED library. And this was published in 1992 by the CED Black Student Associations. And really it was born out of a dissatisfaction and also just I guess a missed opportunity for Black students at that time to gain some of the knowledge they felt was pertinent to the communities they wanted to serve, or the information they were receiving didn't reflect their experiences prior to coming into Berkeley. And so this publication really took the initiative to bring some of these more Afrocentric, you know, approaches to space, to land, the policies that we use to manage space, and really kind of bring to light some of these, I guess you could say, quote unquote, alternative practices. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about this was this this discussion within the publication around street corners and what those mean to different peoples. And they had an example of Berkeley and how people use the street corner for congregation and other types of ways that mainstream society may not see as conducive or legit, but it was just a really beautiful description of how space is utilized in different ways for different people. And so with that, really wanted to just make the next iteration about this. Unfortunately, some of the things that are talked about in this publication are still prevalent today. And last summer really brought that to light, although the struggle has been going on since hundreds of years, since 1619 and a little bit before that as well. And so that's what brought us to this format. And the pandemic really shaped it into this podcast. And so just to go over the project just a little bit, just to show what it is, what the goals are. I think, mainly it's to discuss anti-Black racism in the built environment, along with class and other struggles that we'll see with some of the episodes, including gender, how that's associated with identity and how that relates to planning, really amplify the lived experience of individuals. I think not having to check your experiences at the door and bring your full self and identity goes a long way in trying to understand some of these issues and some of the goals that we want to achieve just for the cities and the urban spaces that we live in. And then, I think bottom line is just the Black cultural perspectives, and I'll say, plural, just because it's such a diverse diaspora, and there are a lot of perspectives even within the quote unquote Black community. So I just think that's a really important piece to bring out, and that's something that I have really enjoyed throughout this entire process. I won't, you can see the goals there, but just to put a point on that last piece is just, these deeper levels of compassion and empathy. Hearing people's story, I think for me has been really moving, and it's been really helpful for me to just understand how to be a better ally. So whatever I decide to do after I graduate from Berkeley, I can have these stories and these experiences with me. So here's just an outline of the podcast, 6 episodes, and just discovering just a ton of different things. So I'll just dive right into it. So for the first episode, really thinking about this, for me actually was this question around, you had Field Order 15, I think it was, after the Civil War, which dedicated 40 acres and a mule. And for me, it was, where does that 40 acres come from? And then it kind of just sparked this larger conversation within myself around, in this contemporary time, where are the commonalities and where are the differences in this liberation struggle between Black folks, Indigenous folks in the United States, the current United States. And so, of course, went back to look at the history, thinking about the Seminole Wars and the descendants of Africans and Indigenous coming together and resisting U.S. colonialism and imperialism at that time. Also thinking about the Cherokee Nation and their relationship with slavery. It's been documented that there have been Cherokee slaveholders, and until recently now, if you're a descendant of a slave that was in the Cherokee Nation, you can apply for Cherokee citizenship. And then also the Buffalo Soldiers. I mean, as in the American West, there were some violent conflicts between African-American soldiers and Indigenous folks. And so, there's just this deep, complex history that I really wanted to bring out, because you can't really have this conversation of anti-Black racism without acknowledging that this is happening on stolen, Indigenous land. And so I guess with that, I also want to give a shout out to the Ramaytush Ohlone people. I'm based in San Francisco, and this is their ancestral land. So big shout out to my Ramaytush relatives. Just going through some movements and organizing, and just trying to figure out where not figure out, but see where there's this solidarity between Black folks and Indigenous folks, and really thinking about, like, again, where are those commonalities? Where can we find this linkage between each other? And of course there's going to be differences, because come with different cultures, different histories, but it's just really important to bring that out. And I just felt like this episode would do that. So we spoke with a few Bay Area activists. We have Jose Garcia, AKA Peps, on the left. We have Mary Jean Robinson, who hosts Voices of the Native Nations at KPOO 89.5 FM. And then Sharia Souza, who is the executive director of the American Indian Cultural District. And great conversations around sovereignty and what that means, and federal recognition, and how that plays into issues around the built environment and planning. So phenomenal conversation. It's out right now. So if you have the opportunity, go check it out, and you can get all into the details around the commonalities, differences, how we move forward together, and just really appreciative for these folks here to contribute. Just on the next episode, going through kind of how movement of Black folks is policed, how it's constrained, and how we use things like freeways to contain Blackness, expel Blackness in cities, and kind of the lasting effects of that. So freeway siting was a racialized process. It was signed off by local governments, federal governments, and it has a lot of impacts on how we move through space today. And I think things that may not seem racialized, in this episode, particularly, we talked a little bit about traffic-related deaths, but thinking about the infrastructure that was placed in there and going back again to the history, I start to see kind of how these things really have these lasting impacts. So we have the Cypress Street Viaduct over to the left that bifurcated West Oakland. It might be hard to see, but 980, I think, is also, might be off to the right a little bit. Another freeway that just kind of split right down the center. Has some, freeways in LA and how that's segregated the city there. And then on the right, we have Claiborne Avenue in New Orleans that just kind of really took a toll on that area and displaced quite a number of Black-owned businesses. So we get to speak with Dr. Destiny Thomas, who runs the Dignity Institute. She has a phenomenal training, and I would recommend anyone who has access and the resources to take it to do so. She's with the Thrivance Group, and also a Bay Area, born and raised in the Bay Area, Oakland, and raised in Alameda as well. Then we have Najari Smith, who hails from New York City. He runs Rich City Rides, and I think, speaking around transit infrastructure was very illuminating for me, but there's also these very deep practices in community that really came out in these conversations. And again, it goes back to that whole thing around empathy and compassion. And I think the love that goes into these type of efforts. And for me, I felt like I could just really see the difference in how these efforts and to engage folks in the built environment, it just really comes from that level of commitment that comes out of these two people. So it was again, loved that conversation, and it's also been released now too. So we'll provide some links for those that are interested, and you can take a listen to what they've been up to. This episode hasn't been out. The next episodes I'm about to go over haven't been released yet, but stay tuned. They will be out very soon. But this episode just looking into space and how space is gendered, and looking particularly into the Black LGBTQ communities, looking at Oakland and how that became a mecca. Just with San Francisco is known as one LGBTQ mecca, but there was racial discrimination and folks making space for themselves in Oakland, and having that be a part of Oakland history is very important. And the area around Lake Merritt, what they did around advocating around the AIDS HIV crisis, and what they're still doing in terms of influencing policies like making sure their folks are housed, and just really doing the work. So it's been great that the Oakland LGBTQ Center has a physical place right there on Lake Merritt, on Lakeshore. And then also looking at the Tenderloin in San Francisco. I mean, that's another place where space, particularly Black trans people have been confined to the Tenderloin, and they have the Compton's Transgender District now, which really celebrates that history. But there is a lot of trauma, a lot of pain, a lot of struggle. But it's been really great to hear what they've been doing, working with folks that are formerly incarcerated or currently incarcerated, getting them housing, getting them employment. And this cafeteria, Compton's cafeteria, was the site of a riot. I think it was 1968, I believe, that really kind of encapsulated, well, maybe encapsulate is the wrong word, but just kind of showed like the strength of the trans community in San Francisco, and the particularly Black trans community in San Francisco. And they've been able to kind of make their place there, and have been present and working there ever since. So a really interesting conversation. We got to speak with Joe Hawkins and Janetta Johnson. And I say we, so Rasheed, who also just spoke, he was I get the privilege of having him as my co-host. So he gets to come in with some great questions when I'm about to fall flat. The next episode is going through this idea of just gentrification and criminalization. I mean, Breonna Taylor was definitely in my mind when I was thinking about this discussion, and how her murder was tied to an alleged connection to a trap house, and how that trap house kind of stood in the way of neighborhood revitalization, and really just thinking a lot about that and the relationship between, and I mean, and this kind of goes beyond just this particular discussion, but the relationship between policing, planning, space is something that I would just love to be a part more of the discussion, so we can really start to figure out, like, this has to be at the center, at the forefront. So on the left, we have images from the Don't Mute DC movement, and that was interesting to me just because even just the sound in spaces and how that's policed was just I had not even thought of it as a thing, I guess, but how people's reactions to that, people asking them to turn down go-go music, which is a local form of music in DC, and what that means for people in their place. Of course, and then we have the infamous Barbecue Becky out in West Oakland, and calling the police on Black people today is very deadly, and I think that's a huge part of this whole gentrification process that needs to be again at the forefront. And then this image is just a development of West Oakland, and I know people are thinking a lot. Well, I hope people are thinking a lot around what this may do to the surrounding ecosystem, but that looks it unfortunately looks a little bleak. But and what does it mean? Like, you have these new developments, but you can also see in terms of the aesthetics some notion to Black West Oakland's past, and so just this whole phenomenon is something that we get into in this conversation as well. We get to speak with Dr. Brandy Summers, who is at UC Berkeley. And we also get to speak with Antoinette Carroll, who runs Reaction Labs out in St. Louis. And Professor Summers did a bunch of work in DC and had some writings on the Don't Mute DC movement. So it was really great to hear her experiences out there. And she's from Oakland as well. So having her reach back into her childhood and upbringing was great as well. And to tie that into some of the work she's doing right now is amazing. And then Antoinette, just being so rooted in St. Louis and in Ferguson, has been to get a little bit broader than the Bay Area was eye-opening to me. And cities are unique, but there are also some of these common through lines. So to see that play out in different spaces was very interesting. Then we move into racialized capitalism. Rasheed walked us through the Holoc maps, or the redlining maps. This is from the same source, so I should still cite it anyways. But I knew he would give you the East Bay version, so I thought I'd give you San Francisco, what it was looking like in my hometown. But really just racialized capitalism in, its context is in American chattel slavery, not only just the profits from cotton production, but also just the mechanisms around global finance. Like it had a lot of influence, and that was built on the backs, of slaves, of African enslaved people. And so its roots there. And then thinking about how it plays into housing markets, on the bottom right, we have Moms for Housing, and just how Black wealth and the systems of home ownership have not yielded the same amount as it has for other groups, particularly white folks. And so, this discussion around racialized capitalism, really looking at how race plays into financial products that are offered. And, it's one could even ask, why even use that modifier? Why even pull out the word racialized? Because capitalism at its root, I mean, it kind of thrives off of, some have successfully argued, in my opinion, have thrived off of racism. So just kind of grappling with that idea and what that means and how it plays out into, how we interact daily with the built environment. Good to speak with Noni Session with the East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative, doing some wonderful, wonderful work, making sure that there are non-extractive practices to land ownership, and having the control of land with the tenants that live there. And then we also get to speak with Solana Rice with Liberation in a Generation, looking at what she's called a liberation economy, where, we're not having extractive policies that we just incur so many fines and fees on the backs of low income and Black folks, and really start to reimagine an economy that isn't rooted in this context of racialized capitalism. And then to bring us home, well, for this part at least, we get to speak with the Black students at CED and hear how their experience has been, what their intentions are moving forward, and just to hear some of their perspectives on some of the things that I've just been talking about. And I really, really enjoyed this. I think this, it's kind of hard to have favorites, I guess, but just to hear how they're taking in all this information, what they're going to do with it, has been really inspiring for me. And not pictured here is Anisha Kimball, who also participated, but I couldn't find a photo of her on the internet. But so that is Community Visions. And I would also like to send a big thank you to Diversity Platforms Committee for supporting this work.
That was an amazing tour through the Community Visions podcast, Zach. Thank you so much. I think it's just amazing, the breadth and the depth of this project, and definitely a theme that I want to ask you about during the Q&A with our time is kind of, you mentioned the changing the conversations, how much they resonate with the past, and I'm curious about what has changed in those conversations. But wow, the podcast links are in the chat, so y'all can all get to listen to these amazing conversations and amazing voices and people that Zach and Rasheed have pulled together for this podcast. So really fantastic work. And now to bring us home and into the present, I would like to ask Ree to take our virtual stage.
Hey y'all, I'm so honored to be here. Thank you again to everyone who made this moment possible for us to have these conversations. Again, my name is Ree. I am a doctoral candidate in African American and African Diaspora Studies here at UC Berkeley, and I'm gonna go ahead and begin my presentation. So in addition to my doctoral research, where I study Black women's healing spaces in Oakland, I also am founder of Black Women Healing, which is an intergenerational collective of Black women invested in our wholeness and well-being. And with Black Women Healing, I curate healing circles, research, publications, and exhibitions for and by Black women. We have curated 2 exhibitions so far. Our exhibitions are seen as biennial. We have a monthly healing circle that I host through the Fannie Lou Hamer Black Resource Center on campus. And so every first Tuesday of the month, we invite Black women and girls on campus of all ages, faculty, staff, students, undergrads and grads, and community folks to join us virtually. And we go through different layers of healing and wellness and checking in with ourselves, checking in with what we need to be well. And as an extension of those monthly healing circles, we launched this exhibition series. So the very first one we did was in 2019 called This Shit Is For Us. It was also funded by CED. And thank you so much again for the Diversity Platforms program for funding our second exhibition, which is going to launch in May of this year, 2021, called Black Girl Quarantine. Also want to name that I had the honor and privilege of teaching a summer course called Black Feminist Healing Arts, Reading, Writing, and Living a Praxis of Womanist Care, where I really worked with undergraduate students at UC Berkeley to think about how we embody and curate from a place of radical womanism, radical Black feminism, and how do we use artistry and creativity as tools for healing. And I just want to shout out my brilliant, wonderful students, particularly the Black women and girls who were in my class virtually, because during the process of our virtual convenings, y'all, like so much happened. You know, this summer was so intense, so heavy, so emotional, especially for us as Black women and girls. And having that classroom space really is what launched me into this exhibition. I had a whole other idea about what the exhibition was going to be. And this summer class and the way we talked about loss and mourning and the violations that we continue to experience as Black women and girls really clarified for me that this exhibition needed to do a different type of work. And so that is what birthed Black Girl Quarantine, an exhibition of Black women healing in the wake of 2020. This exhibit is really inviting Black women and girls to think about our relationship to quarantine, to being in isolation, to not being able to hug our loved ones, to losing so many loved ones. I'm going to read a little bit of the call that we put out. Black Girl Quarantine invites Black women into collective mourning, grief work, and healing in the wake of 2020. Breonna Taylor, Oluwatoyin Salau, Dominique Fells, and countless Black women mourned through Say Her Name 2020, compounded by the loss of beloved artists like Brax and China Rogers, only exacerbate Black women's intimacy with mortality in this season. As we reflect on our gendered, racialized, embodied, and ancestral experiences in the midst of global catastrophe, we center our right to be well, to name harm, to mend wounds, to be unapologetic in our rage, to reflect each other's suffering, to be held close, and to find restoration in the safety of sacred sisterhood. This exhibit is for the Black women and girls who have felt invisible in quarantine, who have lost a loved one to COVID, cancer, suicide, addiction, depression, racism, sexism, misogynoir, homophobia, transphobia, domestic violence, institutional neglect, being Black and woman in America. This is for the sisters who have struggled with loss and isolation, who have been close to death themselves. It is for those of us who have cried ourselves to sleep and who are still longing to be affirmed in that pain. We see you, we hear you, we feel you, we love you. It is our hope that this exhibit will nurture your spirit and remind you that you are not alone. We ask Black women artists from across the country to reflect. How have you experienced harm in this season? How have you experienced healing? What are you mourning in this season? What are you releasing? What have you created this year that you are proud of? How have you survived? Merging multimedia art forms, this exhibit curates a virtual space of communal care for Black women healing in the wake of 2020. I'm just hella emotional because it was just so much loss. And it continues to be so much loss. And what I really was trying to think about is like, what are all the things that are killing us as Black women? Like, there's so many things that are killing us, and COVID was just one of many things that was killing us. And it wasn't just the virus itself, but the aftermath. It was the isolation. It was the depression that came from that. And it was just a heavy ass summer to be a Black woman in America and to be a Black woman globally. And the pain and the weight of all of that is really what birthed this exhibition. And so I really have been leaning into this question: how do Black women and girls honor life, our own lives, and the lives we've lost through our everyday creative praxis of survival? And this is a collage of just some of the Black women and girls who we've lost. And it's been so difficult because I feel like I just keep having to add new images to this. Like, there keeps being more Black women to mourn, more Black girls to add to this long list of loss and mourning. So this is not even the complete image, y'all, because there have been more Black women who died since I created this. And when I came up with this idea for this exhibition, it was before I had lost my own loved ones, before folks close to me. Like, I was seeing death all around me. I was seeing so much loss, and I felt that it was inching closer to me, but I didn't know who it was gonna be, and I didn't know when it was gonna come. And so every new loss, it was like, oh, I gotta add her to the exhibit. And that's just been a heavy thing to sit with. I could not even bring myself to create this image. I had to ask for a homegirl to help me because I just felt like I can't sit with these images. Like, I can't, because it's such heavy ancestral work, and it requires a presence that I just didn't feel like I had the capacity for. I was afraid to be present with all of these Black women and girls, with all of the weight of their trauma, of their deaths. And so I'm grateful for my friend Courtney Lett, who helped me in curating this. And we're gonna have to edit it because we've lost more folks. And I'm honored to honor their life. And I'm also so fucking mad that this image has to keep getting added on to. And just thinking about what is killing us as Black women, what has killed us in 20, all the things. And I say 2020, but 2020 is not a finite year, right? 2020 represents and holds so much of what happened before and what's continuing to happen after. We're continuing to die, we're continuing to lose our life. From birthing while Black and woman in 2020, sleeping while Black and woman in 2020, writing while Black and woman in 2020, healing while Black and woman in 2020, and just trying to survive while being a Black woman in 2020. Whew, y'all, please bear with me through all of the emotions. Braxton was like a little sister to me. She had participated in a number of Black women healing events virtually, before virtual and after virtual. And she passed away on November the 2nd, 2020. And I'm wearing her face, celebrating her life, honoring her life. I want to thank you so much to my big sister, who is also a Black woman artist, and she has her own clothing line called Cami Colace. And so when Braxton passed, I reached out to my sister and I was like, can we create an art piece that I can wear to have Braxton close to me? So I'm so grateful to have this hoodie and to honor Braxton's life. And so we have dedicated the exhibition to Brax. And another thing that I created in quarantine was my first book that came out. And it was such a heavy time because my edits for my book was due on November the 1st. And, you know, I was running late on CP time. And it wasn't until, you know, I realized I just wasn't going to get the edits in time. And Braxton passed the very next day. And I was able to take the time to honor her. So I've dedicated my book to Braxton as well, and dedicated this exhibition to her, and just thinking about how what I create can honor her life, who's a 21-year-old Black woman, queer artist, multimedia artist, y'all, painting, singing, dancing, rapping, so much richness in the artistry that she was curating and producing. And I really encourage y'all to visit braxlegacy.com. Her family is raising funds to have a mural in her honor in her hometown of Richmond, Virginia. So anyone who would be willing to donate, family would definitely be appreciative of that. This is Janine Irvin, who just recently passed a few weeks ago. She was a graduate of the African American Studies and Gender and Women's Studies Department here at UC Berkeley. She was 2 weeks away from submitting her final thesis, and she passed away. Janine was deeply rooted and invested in diasporic arts. She was studying art. She was curating art. She was supporting, she was at Columbia University getting her master's degree. And she was working with the Mellon Foundation to curate art and exhibitions on her campus at Columbia University. This loss has been so heavy for the Black Berkeley community. So I'm also thinking about how we can honor Janine's life and legacy through this exhibition and through the exhibition week that's going to be from May 2nd to May the 8th. Also just want to show a few of the submissions that we've received so far. This is from one of my students from my summer class, Vivian. And this is also from one of my Spelman sisters, Christina. So just thinking about, in the midst of all of the heaviness, all the things that Black women have sat with and survived through, that we've still been able to find joy in the midst of our pain and our suffering. And I'm so grateful to the Black women and girls in my life who have allowed me to feel joy, even as I've worked to process this pain. Thank y'all so much for letting me share.
Oof. Wow, Ree. I gotta get myself together. Ree, your work is so powerful and raw. And I think your voice is so important because we read all these stories all the time in the news. But you bring the reality of the heaviness and the tremendous loss of each individual picture in that collage, just the world, the community, the passion, the art, and everything that each person brought to this world. And it's important that we mourn that. And so I definitely want to come back to, you know, that the theme of healing that resonates in your work. I was struck by something you said, our right to be well. And yeah, I just want to give a shout out to your book, Mourning My Inner Black Girl Child, on nomadicpress.org. And also to mention that your book comes with this really powerful accompanying virtual experience. So there's the poems in the book, and then you have these beautiful you know, kind of rituals and processes to go through where you can practice, you know, some of this healing. And I started to read, you know, some of the virtual experience, and you know, I need to do it, but I don't know if I'm ready. But it's so beautiful. It's such a powerful part of the book. So I want to invite all of our panelists to come to turn on your video so we can have a discussion. I had a lot of questions for all of y'all, but you know, we have a little bit of time together, and we also want to leave time for Q&A. So what I'd like to do is ask each of you raised different issues that I'd like to ask you a particular question. And then I would like to kind of model Zach's podcast and ask, each of you to ask each other a question, or ask your, to throw out a question to the panel, kind of what your burning questions are to ask of each other. And then we'll open it up to Q&A. So I wanted to start with Rasheed, and the question I have for you is about the archive, and your work. The archive is a window into a moment of time, right? Collection of historical documents and records that provide information about places, institutions, people. But it also, we think about official archives, involves gatekeeping and choices about what's worth preserving and whose stories are worth being told. And you presented to us this impressive collection of directories, oral histories, maps and covenants and audio and data. And I wonder if you could tell us more about the challenges in building the archive that you're building for the project that you're working on, and how you're challenging the traditional archive. So kind of some of the things you've experienced in trying to pull these works together, and how you're challenging the archive. If you can talk about that.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Charisma. And thank you, Ree, for your presentation. And I think the archive is definitely something that is historically omitted our stories. So when you think of some of the, like you mentioned, the official institutional archives, right? There's selections that are made of what's worthy of being kept, what's worthy of being remembered and honored. And so I think the first one starting point, it like that exhibit I mentioned, the four families in Berkeley, they were able to curate something at a historical society pulling from family archives. And so I think of, someone who has a photography background, like the first photographer I experienced was my mama. So like I got the photo albums in the other room, right? And so I think like scrapbooking and these other practices that families do, and genealogy, I think those are archives that we can pull on, that we can utilize, that can challenge the absence, right, of being invisible in those archives. I think some of the challenges, specifically trying to do it for Berkeley, is there are sources that are scattered in different places. So there's, depending on what types of material too, but there are planning documents that are in the CED library, or in the Bancroft, or in Richmond at the Northern Regional Library Facility, right? So these scattered archives to try to construct a more comprehensive narrative. And then even the fact that trying to rely on written things like a city directory or a census record, which will only capture where you live, who you live with, how they racialized you, whether they thought you were a Negro or mulatto, and not how you identified yourself. And I think being able to pull in photography and these oral histories is where you're able to do that counter archive work, or to be able to say, like to be able to read the oral history interview from Frances Albrier from 1978, reflecting on her experience in a way that wouldn't be captured by, I forgot if it's the Berkeley Gazette or whichever, publication may have covered her campaign, 20, 40 years earlier. So I think the challenge is the things are scattered, knowing they only have a certain amount of information, and knowing that I do have to challenge and compile against an institutional record that was not concerned about the well-being of Black folks quarantined, right, or confined to a certain space.
That's right. Something you just said, I think, so takeaway, the counter archive is kind of what you're putting together as a really powerful concept. And Rasheed, you're also creating an archive with these voices. Like, we'll be able to look back on these conversations you've been had, just that you're having now, in the same way that you discovered the Community Voices publication, from 20 plus years, 30 years, oh my gosh, I'm getting old, y'all. 30 plus years ago. Still an adult back then. Anyway, so I wanted to come back to the themes that you chose for the episodes. Kind of how did y'all come to those themes? Are those, so you said that the conversations are similar, and so much hasn't changed since then. And so are these themes that directly take, are you kind of continuing themes that you saw in the publication that the students created back then? Or how do you come up with these themes, and what is different about the conversation? I know there's a lot of threads. We haven't overcome racism, and we're still dealing with the legacy. And so, yeah, kind of what has changed in those conversations, and in what ways are you still drawing from those past themes? And yeah, how do you come up with themes for each of your episodes?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, first was just kind of pouring through the original community visions and seeing what they were talking about there. And when I was going through it and kind of thinking about this iteration of community visions, it was before George Floyd. And then when George Floyd happened, it kind of just, it was like the focus was around like anti-Black racism. I mean, community visions definitely touched on that, and how I talked a little bit about how they treat like a street corner. That was something that I wanted to carry. Well, this is something I was interested in and was hoping to carry it into the conversations around this podcast. And originally, it wasn't just going to be a podcast. We thought about doing, in-person kind of things, just trying to expand it out. But when we all went on lockdown, pandemic hit, that was kind of our, I don't want to say only option, but it was something that we figured we could do in a way that was safe and didn't put people in harm's way. So first, it was just going through that, thinking of things that I was interested in exploring further. And then, the murder of George Floyd, and that really brought into, I guess, some of the more, I guess you could call politically pointed discussions, specifically around race. I mean, I think it was always going to have to be a part of that. But really start to see these intersections around policing and space. That was something that came through a lot when we were speaking with Janetta Johnson in Tenderloin, talking with Dr. Destiny Thomas, Najari Smith. It came up so much, and that's something that, I mean, continue to keep talking about and continue to explore further. I mean, what role does planning, urbanism, what roles do they have around our militarized states? So that was definitely something that came up quite a bit after George Floyd, and this actually I'm sure would have came out in conversations if regardless, so I'll leave it at that. And Rasheed, if you want to add anything, please do.
I want to thank you so much, Zach. I want to use you mentioned the street corner. That struck to me, the street corner is such an important kind of space, and to this theme of not only telling stories, but placemaking and space making and community. I want to bring Ree into the conversation, and to talk about, because that's what a lot of your work is about, and particularly for Black women and Black girls. Which of course is, the heart of the Black community. And so I wanted to ask you about the practice, like the role of healing, because it's healing, it's mourning. What struck me at your book launch, you were talking about not just mourning the loss of life, but mourning, who that girl child was, having to grow up too soon. Like there's a lot of layers to the mourning, and the importance of that. And so I wonder if you could explore, how that comes through in your work in terms of those themes of mourning and healing, and this idea of place and space making, particularly for Black women and girls, but broadly, if you want to extend it to the Black community more generally.
Yeah, thank you so much, Charisma, for that question. And thank y'all again just for holding me virtually in my emotional state. And I think that's an important piece, right? I've just come into naming, like, there's no true healing without feeling. And I think academia attempts to like divorce us from our emotional body so intensely. And it's almost like we're not supposed to feel anything. And the further we get from our feelings, from our emotions, the further we are from ourselves, from the richness of our identities, particularly as Black women. And that's why I wanted to shout out my summer class, because we sat a lot with Alice Walker's In Search of Our Mother's Gardens. And she talks so richly about spirituality and artistry and the richness of our ancestral connection to a process of creation, that like literally the ways our ancestors of every generation of Black women across my matrilineal bloodline, her survival was artistry. The way that she made it possible for me to be birthed, for me to survive 2020, that was an art form. And I think so much of the healing that we do with Black women healing is rooted in artistry and in creativity, like what art makes possible and what viewing our lives and our work and our survival and our slay, right? How we celebrate and honor and play and find joy, all of that is an art form. And when we allow ourselves to view that Black girl life, that Black woman life, that Black femme life, when we allow ourselves to view our lives and our livelihood through a lens of creativity and artistry, I think it lends a certain level of appreciation for ourselves that we are so often not afforded. We like, you know, what we do is ghetto, it's ratchet, but it's like, no, sis, that's art. And it's ghetto and ratchet and beautiful and art. And why don't we get to name that for ourselves? Everybody else trying to steal who you are and what you do and what you got. And I think, you know, to your question about like the idea of mourning and loss, I think we have just learned to like grow so intimate with loss, and what's seen as ghetto or as ratchet is what we do with scarcity. You know what I'm saying? Like what we make possible when we have so little. We're so used to loss. We're so used to not having what we need as a community that we've literally learned to create something out of nothing. And I think that mourning and that loss of space, of time, of home, of loved ones, like what we make when nothing is there, and thinking about that ancestral connection, what we make possible of a relationship, what I make possible of my relationship with Braxton, even though she's no longer here. Like that is an ancestral and spiritual art form. And that mourning is heavy and is hard and it's ugly and it's also really beautiful. And it's from that place that I'm able to create the most transformative art.
That there was so much powerful in what you said, you know, no healing without feeling, and just reframing, you know, that whole, you know, the words ghetto and ratchet. And I love that, talking about creation out of scarcity, and the beauty in it, and recognizing that is just wonderful. And so we have a little minute before we open it up to audience Q&A, and definitely want to invite people, if you have questions for our panelists, to please put them in the, use the Q&A feature, and to add your question to the Q&A, and we'll definitely get to as many as we can. And while folks are doing that, I want to see if y'all have some burning questions for each other that you'd like to ask. I don't know if you know, ladies first, I want to give you the opportunity first to ask a question of the panelists, of Rasheed and Zach, or that you want to pose, you know, that you'd like to talk about tonight.
Thank you. I definitely did. Thinking about loss and mourning, I'm wondering, how are y'all understanding like the affective relationship between losing home? Like, what does the sadness and mourning and grief work look like for Black folks who are suffering from the loss of their communities? Have y'all experience, folks talking about their feelings and emotions around that loss and mourning.
Yeah, I'll jump in first. Thank you for that question. You know, when you talked about the loss of space and the loss of home, that resonated with what I understand about South Berkeley. One of my earliest experiences in South Berkeley was going to who I call my grandpa house, Professor David Blackwell. His son was my mom's best friend in community college, and so I was blessed to be able to go to their home on holidays as a child. And being in South Berkeley, I was able to see from the 90s to the early 2000s just how much it changed in that period of time. And so speaking to people who were in South Berkeley, who parents came from Texas or Louisiana, they're always mourning the loss of a sense of community. People are speaking positively about living in a segregated environment, right? People are talking about a loss of community when they was in segregation, right? And so I think that I think in how that shows up, thinking urban planning, what I hear with that loss is also the desire to be able to come home. And so there's a lot of people who talk about things like first right of refusal or the right to return. I think has been the call I've been hearing over the last 2 years from people in Berkeley to want to be able to be and age in the place that they call home.
Thank you, Rasheed, and thank you, Reed. I really appreciate the question. Yeah, it's the how is I don't know. I'm still digging into how and just to the how. I think I shared this in one of the episodes. Being from San Francisco, and people like to tease me, especially folks on the East
Last
Bay,
black
like
man.
I mean, I'm not the last one, but there's some truth to that, unfortunately. And it's almost like I tell people I have this love-hate relationship with San Francisco. I've spent so much time here. I have a lot of memories here. Fortunately, I still have I have my family here. I'm a mom, my brother, and some cousins, some extended family that really helped me keep me rooted. But it's that I mean, like I said, the mental displacement can get pretty real and just kind of like floating through space, not even really feeling like you're a part of something. But when I get around my folks, it's totally different, which I appreciate, which I think keeps me here. I think so. My mom was able to do like the Jeffersons and was able to move to a higher income area of San Francisco. And I remember walking home one night. I don't know. I think I was like 19, 20 or something. I was like a block and a half away from my house, and the police roll up slowly, and then the light comes on, and I'm like, damn, I'm like a block away from my home, but so like they didn't know that. They thought I was in the wrong neighborhood. So ever since then, it's just been a crazy kind of back and forth around like why do I stay here, and just kind of like self-questioning and I feel like sometimes I feel like the strength to just be like, yeah, I'm gonna do it, and then sometimes just like I don't even know what's left for me here, aside from the fact with my family and some of my close homies.
Thank you for that. Yeah, please, Rasheed. I was going to ask who's next.
Yeah, it's not burning, but it definitely is. I'm really curious about the practice of just the virtual memorials, right? So, I know RIP t-shirts and lanyards and tattoos, but seeing people creating like Instagram accounts and y'all have a whole website for your homegirl. And so I'm really curious about that practice, whether y'all would have done it if it wasn't COVID and shelter in place and all the virtual, and just how is that practice or that process a source of healing?
Thank you for that question, Rasheed. I definitely do feel like if we could gather in person, I think that some of the virtual things would still be there, like her family's sight for her. And I mean, this exhibition would definitely be in person. I never envisioned that it would have to be virtual. Even after COVID, I thought for sure, by then we'd be in person. So I really did want it to be virtual. I'm hoping that maybe there's an opportunity for it to still be virtual. I mean, in person, later. But I'm glad you're asking about this because in all honesty, I was very critical of like virtual stuff before COVID and everything. I was like, no, I do in-person events. I don't do virtual events because I feel like there's a sacredness about healing in physical community. So I never, people would ask me, oh, could you do virtual stuff? And I was like, no, it's important to be physically in person. And so now being forced to use the digital, the virtual, I've been thinking so much about how do we force these mediums to stretch for us? How do we engage as much sensory experience as we can to engage in our healing process? So like Charisma was talking about the virtual experience of my book. It's literally a curation of rituals. Like I want people to get away from the screen. So I'm telling you like, hey sis, you here, now go take a bath, go journal, like go do something tangible and come back here. And how do we engage multimedia experiences? Like, so I think a lot about Sonic now, like how do we let people hear something while they're scrolling through something that's meant to be a healing medium for them virtually? So I'm still trying to figure out how I'm gonna do this, but I'm gonna definitely feature some of Braxy's music. Like she was a dope ass rapper, like, and singer. So I want to feature like some of her music in the exhibition virtually, feature her voice, some of the quotes that she said, because she had so much. She was using the virtual world as a healing platform as well. She would go live every once in a while on Instagram and just share the wisdom from her healing journey. So I think really the virtual, for me, the way to be able to engage the virtual more deeply and do the healing work justice has been like the multi-medium. And I'm still working through that for sure. And I also just say that folks have curated an IG page for her too, is Remember Brax. So I'm gonna just put that in the chat as well. I don't know if I spell remember right, but Remember Brax, y'all can definitely check that out as another virtual memorial. But thank you, Rasheed, for asking it.
And Zach, so we have a couple of questions that popped up, but I want to give Zach the opportunity to ask his burning question of y'all. So take it away.
Oh, I was cool. I was cool with getting into the audience Q&A. I guess I have a question for you, Ree, and I understand you're from Philadelphia, and I'm always curious about, like, we talk about the Black diaspora and all the global diaspora as well, but I'm interested in you being from Philly, coming to the Bay, the differences that may have surprised you, the differences you've noticed just within like Black culture.
I always say like Oakland adopted me. I be like repping the town to the extent that, my homies let me. But I feel like Oakland, as soon as I like step foot in Oakland, I feel like the town just embraced me. Moving to Oakland actually was my first step into my own healing journey. So what I've loved so much, I feel like Oakland and Philly are so similar. I write about this in my dissertation too. Like I had homegirls be like, oh, you from Philly? Oh, we love Philly girls out here. Y'all like the East Coast version of us, So it's like y'all like our East Coast cousins. It's a similar like vibe, like people don't realize like the rich creativity, of Philly and Oakland and just those overlaps. I've loved being out here in the Bay and in Oakland. Even the most quote unquote problematic Black folks still got some politics. You know what I'm saying? Like Black people out here, they healing, they eating vegetarian food, they painting, they doing inner child healing, and they just came from prison, like literally, like all in one person. And so just the multifacetedness of like what Black folks are exploring and getting into out here is just so exciting and inspiring. And my husband is from East Palo Alto, EPA stand up. So I feel like just having him in my life, and now we just moved to San Francisco. So I love and appreciate Black Bay Area so much. And just the connections I've been able to make here have introduced me to myself in new ways.
You are so right, Ree. I'm born in the East Coast, Brick City, and yeah, it's a whole other thing happening out here in the day. Fantastic. Well, we're a little over time. For those who want to stay, please do. We're gonna just combine the questions that popped in the chat into one question to the panel and whoever would like to speak on these. But the questions are: what solutions are emerging to keep the richness of the communities that you each are profiling in our cities, and how can we at Berkeley support you and your work? How can we help? So those are the questions that are put to the panel, and I don't know if who wants to take that first.
I can start.
Okay.
It's interesting with solutions and planning. I feel once they get codified, things tend to happen. But that's why we're here, though. That's why we're here. One of the things that I'm interested in, and I need to do more research. In San Francisco, we have these cultural districts, right? So I mentioned the American Indian Cultural District, and what was revealing to me is the issues of federal recognition, sovereignty, and the fact that our Ohlone relatives don't have that right now really limits unfortunately, their participation in this way we do things. So, having a cultural district in terms of a way of providing resources, a way of just recognition, like a resistance to erasure, I think is something that I appreciate. But I mean, I also understand there may be some, it can be problematic. I mean, there's also, I'm blanking, there's a cultural district in the Mission as well. I'm blanking on the name. So I think those are some solutions that are interesting to me, with the caveat that I think, we need to think of a bit more about implementation, and then just to support it, just, get the word out. I think with me, Community Visions has been a great project. I'll probably leave it for the next cohort of students and the future students to maybe pick it up, do whatever they want to do with it. So as long as the information's out there and accessible to people, I think that's a great way of supporting the work.
Rasheed, look like you want to go?
I was trying to defer, but I'll just quickly say on the support, since that's my professor, I'll share in office hours the support I need. I think, sharing this with, your students and, the ways in which people can incorporate, when appropriate, some of these topics in the curriculum, so like people can actively utilize them. And I think related to the solutions to that last point about incorporating it into the curriculum, it's like, I don't know, it's like 8,000 to 10,000 Black people in Berkeley now, or I forgot the exact number, but I feel like I'm saying because I don't have the exact numbers. I prefer to be more accurate, but it's probably more Black people in Berkeley than there was in 1916 when they started the first Black church. So like there are ways we can look into the past to see some solutions that could work for today. Of course, the historical specific, or like the circumstances are different, but I think, there are things that, we can yield from the past to utilize as it's appropriate for the day. And even things that didn't work, sometimes we have to look at those radical ideas that didn't work, or those things that did, that we just need to sustain. So, I still a member of the cooperative credit union in Berkeley, and there's a whole history of like Black folks being involved in that. So anyway, yeah, the support, I think, again, trying to share this with your students, inspire your students, hopefully incorporate things into the curriculum. And then once some of this stuff is incorporated, like find some of these solutions from the past, like community visions, from 1992 inspired us to start a podcast.
Marie, you want to take us home?
Sure. I'll just say quickly, I feel like a lot of times folks feel like we don't already have our answers. And I'll just say, as a Black woman doing work with Black women and girls, we have so many of our own answers. We just need money. Like, just give us the money and the resources to do what we already been doing, because we're doing it. We just can't sustain it because we don't have the money that we need to do it. So I just encourage y'all to financially support Black women, pay Black women, pay us to do what we already have been doing to survive.
Amen to that. On that note, you can start with Ree's book, nomadicpress.org. It's amazing. It's an amazing book. Buy multiple copies for people in your life. And follow Zach's podcast and stay up with our panelists on social media. We look forward to Rasheed's website when it comes out, but support the work that you saw here tonight. And thank you all for joining us. Please join me in Cash App. Please join me in giving a round of virtual applause and express your appreciation to our guests and our panelists today for this wonderful, fantastic, and moving and critical discussion. Thank you all so much. It was an honor to moderate this discussion. I wish we had more time. Y'all are awesome. I'm so proud of y'all.
Thank you.
Y'all amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charisma. And
Thank you, everyone.
Zach.